What is up, everybody? Welcome to Dynasty 365, the Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast here at Fantasy and Frames. No, I'm not Chris Burns. Shocking, I'm sure, as you're looking at me right now. He's taking a little sabbatical from here for a bit, so you're going to be stuck with me and Rich every week going forward for the foreseeable future. But that's okay. Rich, first of all, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Just another great day in paradise. How about you?
Say exactly. Another great day in paradise. But before we start talking about paradise a little bit more, tonight we're going to be covering players who we want to buy or sell between the draft classes of 2021 to 2023 and give our assessments of what really stood out from these players, as well as, whether they overperformed or underperformed. Before we get to that, though, in the words of the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels.
Now, hit our music!
What is going on, everybody? We already got a comment here on the chat. Steve Molina over on YouTube.
What's up, Steve?
Back. Thanks, man. Thank you very much. You probably know Rich a lot more than me here, but we got Drew Scott here. That HBK drop was legendary. Looking forward to the show. Thanks, man. I'm looking forward to you all on Fourth and Frames. You, Nate Markham, and Rhett Manuel, getting everybody ready for Week 11. Week 12. Wow, I'm blurring my weeks together now. That's the kind of
flying by.
That's flying by. Yeah. And Thanksgiving's gonna be around the corner, and before you know it, fantasy playoffs are going to be there, and people are going to be going even more crazy than they are now, which is fine because hey, that's what we're here for at Fantasy and Frames. But this show we're going to get you covered year round. We're trying to help you manage your rosters year round. Find success, get some improvements, done. But before we get into that, Rich, what have you got going on just in general? How's life? How's everything? Tell the people a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. So, just working every day up here in Duluth, Minnesota, doing my thing. But as far as what I'm doing on the daily right now, I'm actually kind of taking a break from all the extra stuff. I'm just focusing on this show and the show with the Waiver Wire show on Tuesdays at 8 Eastern, 8 p.m. Eastern, with Stacey Perez, Keith Fleming, Erica. Don't know Erica's last name, and now I feel sheepish. Brown. I did know Erica's last name. Thank you, and Kevin Tompkins.
No, you all crush it every Tuesday. Seriously, folks, if you want to get ready to put your waiver wire bids or claims in there every Tuesday, tune in, here on YouTube or, wherever you watch our show, the waiver wire show here at Fantasy and Frames Day from 8 to 9:30 p.m. every single week. Just get you ready. So definitely pay attention to that. And yeah, so aside from me, folks, you may normally notice me on the Shoot the Gap, the IDP Fantasy Football show that we have on Wednesdays at 10 p.m. And it's kind of strange here, Rich, because at being the last podcast on a Wednesday, JT and I we definitely go over our hour limit, because there's nobody behind us that we have to worry about. And let's just say there's times where we'll have humble bragging, but hundreds of people watching Shoot the Gap, and it's 2 hours go by, and it's oh crap. There's work tomorrow, and there's getting up early, which is not conducive to being up that late. But you know what? The folks like it, so we give the folks what they want.
That's right.
Unlike here, where we are pressed up against the clock because there is Fourth and Frames immediately after here. So without further ado, let's just get into what we're here to talk about. Dynasty, as you all know, can either be a short game. You play the short game, or you play the long game. The long-term investments that help your roster stay stable for years to come. Or conversely, you have the win now mentality, where it's how can I make my roster better right now to help make me compete for a title? And so the way we're going to break this down is we're going to look at the draft classes from the past 3 years. and we're going to be talking about players that we've seen do very well metrically as well as performance-wise, given their opportunity, and people that you should be probably investing in going forward. And then we're going to be talking about players that over the past few years through the various draft classes that, maybe you want to sell or do some reassessing on your roster of how you want to handle having that player on your roster. So it's kind of funny because looking over the show sheet, giving you all a peek behind the curtain, I took all running backs and and Rich, you took like receivers, whether they're tight ends or wide receivers. And that's kind of funny because I think that leads us to our first kind of overarching theme today. And please push back if you think I'm incorrect here, but we all know running backs have a short shelf life, right? For the NFL and for Dynasty, right? Versus wide receivers, they have more of a longer shelf life. At least that's just been the narrative that's been given out for years and years, and that a lot of people follow.
Mm-hmm.
So the running backs I'm going to be talking about now, I feel like running backs are the position that the people who are in win now mode are the positions that they go after in trades, because you're not going to get them 3 or 4 years now and have the same productivity that you are having now. Versus a wide receiver, it may be a little bit more difficult to trade for just because people want to have that safety net of the long-term protection. What are your thoughts on that, Rich?
No, I absolutely agree. That's one of the first things whenever I'm rebuilding. The first thing that I'm selling is my running backs, because most likely I'm that 3-year window. Like I like to go everything by a 3-year window, and most likely if I'm rebuilding, I'm outside of that 3-year window, and who knows what's going to happen with the running backs that I have, unless I have like a Bijan Robinson or Breece Hall, somebody who's still pretty young that's going to be there for a few years at least. Otherwise, yeah, no, that's the first thing that I'm doing is I'm trying to flip those running backs for wide receivers or future picks. So yeah, I think you nailed it.
And so, for the sake of not insulting a lot of your all's intelligence, not every name is going to be like a big name. We know the Jonathan Taylors and the Puka Nakuas, we know where their value lies, but that's not how you win in fantasy. It's not your first couple round picks. It's the the heart of the team that you get in the later rounds. And as for Dynasty, it's about finding those depth pieces that can really go a long way if given the proper opportunity. So let's get into it first. Let's get into we'll do one of each, I guess.
Yeah,
fourth. So let's start with you, Rich. Let's talk about a receiving option that you are pretty impressed with from the 2021 draft class.
Sure. So my 2021 draft class selection was Amon-Ra St. Brown. He was somebody that coming out was not on a lot of people's radars. And as for me, even, I'll be honest, he wasn't really on my radar as far as being a receiver that I wanted. I did draft him in a few spots, luckily, but it was straight vibes. I was just like, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I like that. It's a good name. We're gonna roll with that. And got a 4th round pick. Why not? And I can't believe that it worked out the way that it did. I mean, you look at where he's finished as a receiver since he's come into the league. Wide receiver 22 his rookie year, wide receiver 7, wide receiver 3. This year he's wide receiver 2, right behind Jamar Chase. You're looking at 191 total points so far, 19.1 points per game. He has the 2nd most touchdowns and the 4th most receptions. So like he's dominating in the categories that you want, that those targets and those receptions and everything like that. He's dominating in those fields. If you're looking at trying to trade for him, your DLF has him valued at about a early 1st and a late 1st. So if you're just looking at draft capital, that's kind of what you're looking at. I personally would probably be trying to do something with another player. A lot of times, like, that's something that I've been trying to get my mind into, and I've been trying to preach more is when you're doing trades, make sure that you're trading a pick and a player, or a player specifically. Like, I know we're not talking about trading away Amon-Ra St. Brown, but if you were talking about trading away, like, you'd want to get that early first, and then the equivalent of another player that is a late first, somebody that's a known commodity, just because of the fact that you don't know what you're going to get with that late round first. So, but yeah, anyways, back to what we are talking about. But yeah,
Tangents, going on tangents. So please,
Go
by all
on.
means.
yeah. But yeah, no. So, yeah, early first and a late first. I was actually kind of surprised when I saw that as being his value. I figured it'd be like 3 firsts at least to be able to get him. I think a lot of people would probably be looking for that. So, you're gonna have to pay for him to get him at this point in his career, but you're not gonna have to worry about wide receiver for a while.
That is for darn sure. So 2 things. One, in my longest running dynasty league that I'm in, can you believe that I got him off of the waiver wire because he went undrafted?
I can, yeah.
Rookie year when he started to be the only receiving option for Jared Goff, and he put together that hot, streak towards the end of the season. After that first game, I'm like, you know what? Maybe there's something here. He had a really good game. He's the only receiving target. People are still talking down about him that, when the other receiving targets come back, then he's not going to be as, awesome as a wide receiver, fooled you, basically. But in terms of trading, you mentioned trading Amon-Ra, and that's not really something that you would want to do, or you expect the haul you get in return to be fairly large. Let's talk about draft. Let's talk about trading ethics, especially this time of year. And as we get closer to the fantasy football playoffs and championships, if you make the playoffs and you have a pretty stacked team, or I should say you don't have a stacked team, you have like a few assets in draft capital, but not much, and you have like one really good wide receiver or one really good running back, and a team that is in the playoff contention, they are projected to be the winner or come in first or second or third, depending, on ranking and whatnot. Would you make a trade with that team who's already like one of the top teams based off of win-loss record for your Amon-Ra St. Brown, but getting, a whole bunch of picks back or, trade capital back, knowing full well that you are now purposefully inserting yourself, kind of screwing over all the other managers that are in the playoffs, but also knowing like, hey, this is Dynasty. I want my picks, and I don't care how I get them. I just want to get them. What are your thoughts on that scenario?
So you're saying you'd be trading away Amon-Ra St. Brown in this scenario?
Yeah. So like you have like the number 1 seeded team, and they're like, I'm missing my last piece of the puzzle here is number 1 wide receiver. When they come to you and you're like, not in the playoffs, and you are like, can I get Amon-Ra from you? And it's like, sure, if you give me like 3 firsts in a couple seconds or whatever the trade cap. I'm just throwing it out there. Would you make that trade knowing that you're directly impacting the playoffs, kind of giving this person an unfair advantage? Or do you not care because it's Dynasty and you just want your capital however you get it?
Right. I think so. I've been a big proponent of no trade deadlines. And so I'm the way that I look at it, any given Sunday, anything could happen really. So when you make those trades, one, the person that is trading for Amon-Ra St. Brown better be coming correct and knowing, hey, you're going to be paying a little bit more than what you normally would be paying to get him off of me for one thing, for just to start off with. For 2, as far as like everybody else being upset about you helping this person out, I mean, if they want to come and try to make the trade, they can make the trade too. There's nothing stopping them. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, at the end of the day, do what you got to do to help better your team.
Yeah, I'm curious to those that are in the YouTube chat right now or on X. If you want to drop a comment here, just let us know. Would you make that trade? Would you? Do you believe in no trade deadlines in your dynasty leagues, or do you believe when the playoffs start there should be some restriction there? I'm curious to hear what people's thoughts are on that. My 2021 player that I'm really, really high on, and it's really because of last year's production as well as what his production has been so far this year. That's Chuba Hubbard. Well, you want to talk about coming out of nowhere last year. They get rid of Christian McCaffrey. Chuba Hubbard's drafted in insert round. I forget which round it is. Obviously he wasn't one of the top picks coming out of Oklahoma State. But now you look at his trade value per DLF in PPR Superflex tight end premium leagues, and it's a 25 late second round pick. He's their Superflex ADP has him as the RB 17. Up until this point in the season this year, amongst all the other running backs from this 21 draft class, he's first in yards after contact per attempt. He has the highest elusive rating. He has the highest breakaway one percentage. He's third in missed tackles forced. And right now, he is having lead back duties. We don't know what's going to happen when Jonathan Brooks comes in, but we do know that he just got that nice contract recently, which kind of tells me, okay, they're drinking the Kool-Aid here. They're going to be like every other 1-2 punch team at running back. But there's something to be said about his upside going forward. And if I'm a dynasty manager and I want that top piece, that missing piece of the puzzle heading into the playoffs, I'm making a trade for Chuba right now because and here's the thing, you can even use the narrative, well, Jonathan Brooks is coming in, so or you could use the narrative, we don't know what to expect from Jonathan Brooks, and right now we've seen the crazy production that Chuba Hubbard has had so far this year, and you can kind of drive up your price that way. This would probably be the week to do that, to be honest with you, before Jonathan Brooks steps on the field and goes crazy, in which case that's going to push down the value of Chuba Hubbard just a little bit. But he's somebody who, if I am in contention and I want to make a push for him, I want to get him right now. And if I'm the one who's giving him away, I want to get a lot in return for him based off his performance. Any thoughts on Chuba by any chance there, Rich?
Actually, I was going to ask you what you thought about some stuff that we were kind of talking about it last night on the show, and somebody else was talking about it too. I can't remember who, but they were talking about the fact that just with the injury that Jonathan Brooks had, like, are we positive that they are going to bring him back this season to compete when Chuba is doing as well as he is doing? Do you think, or do you think that like they're going to get him in, like, because it's at this point in the season, it's such a pointless thing to do, right? Like, they're not winning. Why would you bring a running back in that's recovering right now from a really bad injury? Why would you put him into that situation to possibly injure him again in a losing season? So personally, I think I think you're right. Chuba is going to be the guy there.
Two things from Steve in the YouTube chat. And by the way, Steven, thank you very much for tuning in and participating. He says, no deadlines. If someone wants to pay a premium to get a championship, by all means, let them. And he also says he believes Brooks was a full participant in practice today. So I want to say that he is trending towards playing this week, but it makes me wonder whether or not, Canales is going to use him like a Rashad White, last season, use him more as a receiving back option that we know he had that skill set coming out of college, and keep Chuba more of like the grinded, on the ground type of running back.
Yeah.
In which case that's right up his alley, right? So yeah, that's my thought there on Chuba Hubbard. Really, really big on Chuba Hubbard. If you can get him right now for this season to help you complete your team to get a championship, I would make that trade. Who's your next player from the 2022 draft class?
2022 draft class, I went with Trey McBride. I've all upside here with the guys that I'm looking at. He finished so far since he came into the league, he's finished his tight end 40, which wasn't really surprising. He was behind Zach Ertz at that time. And then the next year he finishes tight end 7 last year. Currently he's tight end 4 with tight end 4. He's currently tight end 4, but he's also got tight end 4 in points per game on average. He's got 116 total points. He's third in reception yards, and he's tied for third for receptions in general. So again, that stat of how many targets are they getting and everything like that. He's dominating in that section, which is huge to me. DLF has him valued at about a mid first and a 2025 mid second. So a mid first and a mid second to be able to acquire him. I think that's something that I'd be more than willing to pay at this time. And like I said, I think that he is going to continue to improve. I think that he had the perfect situation sitting behind Zach Ertz and learning from Cliff Kingsbury. I really think that he is going to just continue to improve. So he's one of my favorite tight ends right now.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Like, he's somebody who, here's the thing. What are your expectations for like what somebody would either want you to pay for him, and conversely, what would you personally want in return for a Trey McBride at this point this year?
At this point in the year,
knowing that he's more of a long-term play, not
yeah,
only for this year but going forward for years to come.
right, yeah. Like I personally, I would want that first round pick, and I'd probably want another tight end coming back that I know is capable, or that I have strong faith in that is going to be capable. Like the one that keeps coming to my mind is Ben Sinnott. Like, I really do think that he is going to be a big deal in Washington once Zach Ertz steps aside. And again, I think it's the perfect combination, perfect situation where Trey McBride is got to learn from Zach Ertz. That's exactly what Sinnott's doing right now. He's just sitting there. He's learning the game. He's learning from Cliff Kingsbury. He's going to get his opportunities. So something like that, where I would want a first and Sinnott coming back, or somebody like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense right there. My guy from 2022 that I'm really, really happy he's doing well this year. Currently in PPR formats in points per game, he's the RB5, averaging 18.4 points per game. Kenneth Walker III, just, when everybody saw a couple of years ago, Zach Charbonnet get drafted to Seattle, everybody was like, "Oh my God, what are we doing?
Right.
We're Kenneth Walker. His value is going to tank. It's Charbonnet is so good coming out of UCLA. The world is ending. And it's been all right. It's been,
Right.
Especially this season, it's been all right. You look at the snap percentages here, 51.8% to 47.5% of Charbonnet's. You look at DLF's, trade value for PPR Superflex tight end premium, 25 first and a mid first. I mean, well deserving of that. If I'm the dynasty manager trying to get something in return for him, I want a couple firsts, or maybe a first and a bunch of seconds. Because this guy has just been tearing it up. DLF Superflex ADP currently for November is the RB8. I mean, in terms of like all the running backs from the 2022 draft class, I mean, this guy is first in elusive rating, fourth in yards after contact per attempt, fourth in missed tackles forced. I think this offense here in Seattle is finally utilizing all these skill players the right way. The part that really stands out for me, though, is the fact that he's becoming more of a receiving option, in the Seattle offense. Per PFF, looking at their receiving grades, he's their third ranked running back in terms of receiving production. He has 1.25 yards per route run, which has him as the RB4 of that draft class. So just so many more ways and such an expansion of his skill set that it's just driving his value up and up and up. And again, if I'm contending for a title and I need a running back, I'm paying up for Kenneth Walker. I want now. I want to win. And this guy's giving you many reasons to win, and how he's going to go about doing that. So that's really my thoughts there on Kenneth Walker. What about you for the what about you? Were you scared when Zach Charbonnet got drafted there to Seattle?
I remember drunkenly walking around on the floor of the Minnesota Vikings US Bank Stadium, because I was at the draft party there. And I remember hearing Charbonnet getting announced and just being like, what just happened? Like, could not believe that he had just gotten drafted. And I was super nervous when it first happened. But I looking back at it, it must have just been an insurance policy just in case, something happened with Kenneth Walker. and Kenneth Walker was always going to be the guy there. So I'm happy that it worked out the way that it did, because I have several shares of Kenneth Walker that I was super nervous about. I was just thinking about it just now. I was looking at tonight. I was looking through some of my dynasty rosters, and because the trade deadlines are coming up in a lot of the leagues, or if they haven't happened already, and I was thinking about players that I could move on from because I'm rebuilding in several of them. And I saw Kenneth Walker, and I sat there for a second because, like I was just talking about or like we were just talking about a few minutes ago about running backs and how that's the first thing that I go to unload. I couldn't do it. Like I thought about trying to find somebody to trade him to, and I was like, you know what? I like him way too much. He's got the skills. They're using him properly. That's one that I don't want to move on from. He's young. He's got a lot of tread on the tires. Yeah, I'm excited for him.
And one of and that makes total sense because, and I think what helps that, thought process is the fact that he has become such a good receiving option that you can hold on to him, even if he loses some efficiency on the ground in terms of, rushing yard averages, at least, you still got the receiving chops there to make him financially viable, especially in a PPR. Unlike a Chuba, who's actually created the worst receiving back out of the 2021 draft class. They're not great at all. But you know what he is. He is on the ground running back who you want to get his upside now, and pay for it however you can. Kenneth Walker, to give away Kenneth Walker, I'm right there with you. I'm in a rebuild in the Fantasy and Frames Dynasty League. And I think I actually submitted my roster to you and Chris, and both of you were like, yeah, you don't need HN. You don't need Kenneth Walker. You don't need insert running back. Send them to me. And I'm just like, I wonder if there's hidden motives or agendas going on here. But because at the end of the day, one, they were like the top running backs that I had, and I need to have obviously running backs on my roster. And second, it's just one of those things where, the more multifaceted a player can be, both rushing the ball and receiving the ball, those are hard to find. Those are really hard to find. Those are the gems of the gems there at the running back position. And so you want to hold on to those pieces as best you can. And even then, we talk about, everybody has a price, to quote the $1 Million Man from professional wrestling, for those who get that reference. I don't know, man. Kenneth Walker, just for me, it just seems like somebody that there's not a price you could give me unless it's like an absurd price that you probably won't offer. Like, you're not offering me 3 first-round picks for Kenneth Walker.
Right.
So I'm with you there on holding him there. Let's go to the 2023 draft class. Who do you got there, Rich?
So this is a little bit of a homer pick, I'll be honest, a little biased, but in all honesty, I really do love him. Jordan Addison is somebody that I think that people should be trying to grab right now, especially right now where this year has been it's been a sophomore slump. But I'm really interested to see where things improve, or how things improve with JJ McCarthy versus Sam Darnold. We've seen a lot of growing pains, not growing pains, but we've seen a lot of pains with Sam Darnold towards the middle of the season so far. So I really think that Jordan Addison has his best games ahead of him. We saw how he did last year. He was he was wide receiver 23. He was top 30 in targets, receptions, and receiving yards, and he was tied for 4th with the most touchdowns. And so he has the ability to be a number 1 wide receiver. The way that I'm looking at him actually is he's the next. He's like T. Higgins. He's like Devonta Smith, where he's a number 1 wide receiver stuck behind another number 1 wide receiver who just happens to be better. It's not his fault that he's stuck behind Justin Jefferson. You know what I mean? So I think that in the end of things, whether it's him staying with Minnesota and just getting more utilization, more usage with JJ McCarthy coming in, or if it's him having to move on and going to a team where he is the number 1 wide receiver, I think it's nothing but good things for him in the future. DLF has him valued at around a late first plus a little bit more, so maybe like a 4th or a 3rd. more than happy to pay that value to get him. If I'm trading him away, I'm probably asking for. You're probably not. I was going to say a first and a second, but I don't think you're going to get that after how this year, because I mean he's currently wide receiver 55, so it is a bit of a slump this year. So,
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I think I'd probably be asking for at least a mid first, not a late first. So
for Jordan Addison, like you think you could pull it? Like, okay,
yeah,
I would have a hard time giving up a first for the number 2 wide receiver. Like I feel like this is like if he went to another team, like T. Higgins is probably going to go to this year, where he's a wide receiver 1 somewhere, then I could see the first pick there. But
too much for you.
It's a little too much, too rich for my blood. Rich, see what I did there?
Yeah.
No, I get you. I see where you're coming from. For me, the player that really stood out at the running back position, who I think it's another one of those cases, like a Chuba Hubbard. It's in a combination of Chuba Hubbard and Kenneth Walker that we've seen this year. Granted, small sample size. Tank Bigsby, DLF value, PPR Superflex tight end premium, late 2025 second currently. DLF Superflex ADP RB 48. I mean, this guy really has it. He's number 1 in elusive rating, number 1 in breakaway run rate, first in yards after contact per attempt, 4th in missed tackles forced, 4th in yards per route run. It's insane. It's insane that like last year everybody was like, "Oh, Tank Bigsby, he's going to be a guy," and then like nothing, and then everybody completely wrote him off and forgot about all of his abilities that he had coming out of Auburn, and I know our own Keith Fleming did a college profile on Tank Bigsby a couple years ago where he was super high on him, and now we're seeing the faith coming and being rewarded there. We don't know what's happening with Travis Etienne. We saw when Etienne and him were both healthy, quote unquote, because he was really healthy, during the football season. That it was Tank Bigsby who was slowly each and every week eating into the snaps, where he was basically then the de facto RB1 there for Jacksonville until he suffered an injury. He's been out ever since. But just you look at the efficiency, you look at the productivity. Man, I really feel he's somebody who has again the receiving chops like a Kenneth Walker, but also just does it on the ground like a Chuba Hubbard. So he's kind of like I don't know. I want to say he's like, for me, the perfect trade target for the running back position. If I want if I have multiple flexes in my spot, or if I want a flex play going forward, I'm not necessarily wanting to pay up for him as like an RB1 and RB2, even though I can see him, if the current trajectory holds steady, being somebody who could fall into an RB2 territory if given the opportunity. But with Jacksonville going through all the different crap that it's going through, if I'm a buyer, I would tell the person who has Tank Bigsby, here, this is my offer. It's probably a second round pick, late second round pick. And then they're going to tell me all the efficiency things you just talked about, and he's so good at this and that. He needs to be a high first or low first or a high second. And I could then counter and say, you don't know what's happening in Jacksonville after the season's over. You don't know if there's going to be a regime change. There's a lot of talk of that. There's a lot of rumor and speculation, but we don't know that. So, if we had kind of the certainty of what his role would be going forward, that'd be one thing, but we don't. And therefore, because you don't know that, I would get in counter and say, look, you're not going to get that first for me or that second. This is a fair trade. Most importantly, anybody else you try to negotiate with, if you're trying to offload Tank Bigsby, is not going to give you what you want either. So that would be kind of my negotiating attempt. I don't know how successful that would be, but that would be where I would draw the line. But if I'm, that's really high on Tank Bigsby. What are your thoughts there on Tank Bigsby there, Rich?
I'm really torn because I do like Tank Bigsby a lot. I really liked ETN, and I was shocked at how hard he fell. So I'm trying to pivot. and go towards what's happening, like as you've been mentioning, like everything is Tank Bigsby right now. Everything is up for him. So you gotta make the moves and pivot when you can. So yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think that I would probably I think a second does sound right. I'd probably give up a mid-second for him, a mid to first second, early second, I mean.
Yeah, it's and here's the thing: if they're both healthy and they're both active one day, and we're seeing Etienne kind of take over that backfield again, I still would make an effort to go get Tank Bigsby just to have as a depth piece on my roster.
Yeah.
Obviously, the asking price is going to be, the asking price if I have the manager who has Tank Bigsby is going to be a lot lower, just because we're seeing Etienne reassert himself. But either way, whether he is somebody who takes over as the RB1 rest of the season, or somebody who takes a backseat to Travis Etienne's snap percentage, he's somebody that I want. He's somebody who you have the efficiency metrics there. We've seen the productivity, and that's something that I think we as fantasy football analysts, we get kind of hung up on a little bit. Is you hear all these tweets, or you read all these tweets, and you hear all these people talk about efficiency this and efficiency that. And yes, tracking efficiency is a great way of being able to tell who's like on the verge of a breakout, or who's somebody that you want to get ahead of the curve on in trades. And I get that. And that's a very viable way to look at it. It's another thing when you can tell me about all these efficiency metrics, but when given the opportunity to do something on the field, they don't do that.
Right.
They don't for you. We've seen both from Tank Bigsby, which is why he's somebody that I'm really high on. I never thought of you talking this much about Tank Bigsby back in the offseason, yet here I am. So, yeah. All right. So we talked about players that we're high on for the respective draft classes. Let's talk about some players that we are not so high on. Let's go to 2023. Let me kick us off here. Roschon Johnson. Roschon. Now, I say this now before this weekend starts, because the reports came out today that Swift missed practice with a groin injury or hamstring injury, some soft tissue injury. And if this lingers, Roschon could be propelled into the lead back duties for the Chicago Bears this weekend. Even if that's the case, and even if he finds the end zone a couple times, I still think you can make the argument of buying him on the low. And let me tell you why. You go, well, first of all, his DLF trade value is 2025 early third round pick. Given the current situation in Chicago, I guess that's fair. You know what I mean? I actually think that's very fair. And the DLF Superflex ADP is RB53. Let me tell you why that's fair for Roschon Johnson. Again, per PFF, amongst all the running backs in the 23 draft class, 10th in missed tackles for, so bottom of the barrel, 10th in yards after contact per attempt, bottom of the barrel, 10th in elusive rating, and 9th in breakaway run rate, bottom of the barrel, 7th in yards per route run, again, close to bottom of the barrel. Like, efficiency-wise, just hasn't been there, right? And so you could tell me, oh, well, he got me 15 points this week. He got me back-to-back week at 15 points. And I'm like, I can guarantee you that's not sustainable if these efficiency metrics don't get better or they improve. Because these are perfect examples of like people you want to sell high on when they get on a hot streak and then get rid of because you just know based off efficiency that sustainability is not there. But so, yeah, I'm disappointed because he's coming out of Texas. There's a lot of upside with him. And we saw going into free agency this year, it was basically him and Khalil Herbert who were going to duke it out. And we saw towards the end of last season that Roschon was getting a little bit more snaps than Khalil Herbert was. And then they go ahead and get DeAndre Swift. And that completely just tanked his value. And to be honest with you, going forward, I don't think he's even somebody that I would want to go and get even as a depth piece because, again, going back to the whole efficiency narrative that, I need to see better performance on the field before I can invest in production by itself.
Yeah.
Any thoughts with Roschon Johnson in that regard?
The one thing that I will say is that I do wonder how much. I mean, two things that I'll say, and it's about the Bears in general. One is the coaching aspect. I wonder how much of that has to deal with what Roschon Johnson has done so far, and two, the offensive line. Now, like you're saying, some of these metrics are not, it's individualized, like him breaking tackles and stuff like that. Whether the offensive line is holding up or not, he should still be able to break tackles, and him being bottom of the barrel there is pretty concerning. But I do think that, man, just like you were saying, watching him come out of college and everything and what we saw from him in college, I was excited. So there's a part of me that I'd be happy to pay that little, that what was it, a third, late second?
Yeah, 25 early third pick. Yep,
early third. I'd pay a third just to put him on my bench and hold on to him and hope. I have a bunch of shares where that's exactly what I'm doing right now, is I'm just holding on and hoping. So,
and of course, folks, we talk about selling and we talk about buying and who's a buy and who's a sell. It's all relative to what you got on your roster. Like if you only have
right,
3 or 4 running backs, like don't get rid of Roschon Johnson, even though I'm telling you, like, there's not really a reason to have him. The reason for you is that you only have 3 or 4 running backs and he's one of them. So, you need to have, with bye weeks and everything, hold on to him. But in an ideal situation where you're loaded at the position, for me, and I hate to say this, and this is probably going to ruffle some feathers, I don't want to say the word roster clogger, but he's trending in that direction for me. And I kind of want to avoid that. I'd rather have more open bench spots for players to be filled in via rookie drafts next year than maybe hold on to a Roschon Johnson, especially given the situation in Chicago where we don't know what's going on, but we do know they paid DeAndre Swift, so he's not going anywhere anytime soon. Roster clogger, that's a tough term, but it's becoming more and more accurate each and every week from my perspective. For the 2023 draft class, who's somebody that you are low on?
So for me, and this one really hurt because I loved him coming out, and I've been banging the drum for him the last couple of years, still saying that all he needed was the carries. Najee Harris. I really, really love Najee Harris coming out. There is an argument for him being the first overall pick in that draft. And since then, he did finish his RB3 that first year, and then RB13, and then RB22. Right now, he's RB22. So it's been a slow decline. He's kind of resting at that bottom of the barrel, bottom of an RB2 type area. He's averaging 12.8 points per game. The thing that frustrates me, though, is I've always, like I said, I always argued that he needed the carries. Well, he's 6th right now in total carries, and he still isn't getting it done. So they're saying that his on DLF his value is early second. I feel like that's going to drop a little bit more even after this year. And I'd probably pay. And even if I was looking to sell him, I'd probably be looking for like a mid to late second. I think he's still worth a second round pick because, like I said, he is an RB2. But yeah, no, I'm definitely I'm licking my wounds on that one and eating some crow.
It's funny. When we were at the Fantasy Football Expo, I was talking to a couple of people from CBS Sports, and they're even saying, like, kind of the word, on the street is, he's not really endearing himself to the coaches there in New Orleans. And so that's generally not something you want to hear from about a dynasty asset going forward.
Right.
Yeah, no, but is he somebody that you'd want to still hold on to going forward, or is he somebody that you want to try and unload as best as possible?
If I'm rebuilding, yeah, I'm unloading him. If I'm anywhere near competing, I'm probably holding on to him just to see what he does, especially if he goes someplace else. That's a tough question. That really is. I'm probably selling him. Eddie Lacy's second coming. Yes. Not quite as many cheeseburgers, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great reference there, Stephen. Thank you very much. Next person we'll go to is from the 2022 draft class. For me, and this is where it gets tough, man. And Rachaad White. Let me just put it out there. Rachaad White. Like Bucky Irving, notwithstanding, who is a phenomenal player, and I think will eventually take over lead duties and have the higher snap percentage over Rachaad White. But per DLF ADP or dynasty value, he's going for right now a 2025 early second. Late first. DLF Superflex ADP has him as RB31. Currently, it holds a 54.3% snap percentage over everybody else. Now, granted, there have been injuries for other running backs that have prevented them from having the snap percentage where they should be. So that take that into account. But you look at where he's at. Sorry, let me pull it up really quickly. You look at yards after contact per attempt, going back to these efficiency things. He's the RB6. You go after, missed tackles forced. He's the RB8. We all know where he gets his bread and butter, though. We know that he's in the receiving game. He's PFFs, per the 2022 running back draft class. He's the RB1 in that scenario. He has one of the highest yards per route run. In fact, he is the highest in terms of that efficiency metric. But then again, you go look to his elusive rating. It's like, RB7 in that draft class. And, we have people like Brees Hall, Brian Robinson, Kenneth Walker above him. And again, now taking into account Bucky Irving, I get it from a PPR aspect. Like, you want to hold on to these PPR targets and you want to hold on to these players on your roster. But I'm just concerned with Bucky Irving just being such a better running back that he's just going to see the field more and more to the point where it kind of negates some of the reception value that Rachaad White might have going forward. Now, granted, that being the case, he is not somebody that I'm trying to offload because you never know what could happen with Bucky Irving. God forbid there's an injury. He steps right in and gets, again, the bump up in receiving volume, which he is so great at and efficient at. But a little disappointed that Rachaad White just isn't a better running back as he has a pass catching back. Would that be the consensus you have there for Rachaad White?
Yeah. I was really high on Rachaad White last year. Thought he was going to be like in the off season. I thought he was going to be a great running back there, and then his efficiency shocked me with how I don't want to say how bad. That's not the right wording. Just how inefficient he is at running the ball. It really shocked me. Love his him in the pass game and everything. Like everything that you said, like you nailed it. But yeah, no, I that's actually one value or one asset that I am trying to offload if I have them.
All right, let's go with the final players from the 2021 draft class at their respective positions. Who do you got?
You mean 2022?
We just did. Yeah, my bad. 2022. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, sorry. So for me, this one was Christian Watson. And I'm gonna be honest. I never had a whole lot of faith in Christian Watson as it was coming out. And this, no bias here. It's just I looking at Watson and what he did, I wasn't really impressed with him as a receiver. And coming from the smaller school, it felt like it was Trey Lance all over again. You know what I mean? Like I just felt like he was just somebody that did really well at a smaller school and wasn't gonna compete the same way on the next level. Since he's come into the league, he has a 73.9 overall player grade from Pro Football Focus. He's caught 20 of his 31 targets, so he is fairly efficient in catching the ball. But he's had health issues just nonstop. There really isn't a whole lot of efficiency metrics that you can really grasp from him just because of the fact that he has been hurt so much. And when he has been on the field, he just hasn't done a whole lot. He's never finished higher than wide receiver 40. I think you'd be lucky to get a late DLF has his value as a late second. I think you'd be lucky to get a late second for him. Yeah, I'm out on Christian Watson, and I'm trying to unload him wherever I have him. If I have him.
All these receiving options for Green Bay, it's great for Jordan Love, but not so much for the individual receiving options there.
Right, right.
And the health issues, for Christian Watson, again, it's just not a big collection of just bad stuff happening there for a dynasty. And just, I agree with you, not somebody that I want to invest in, and would like to get rid of to somebody who may think more highly of him. Now for 2021. For me, the player that disappoints me the most is Javonte Williams. DLF value, PPR, Superflex, tight end premium, early 2025 third, currently the RB 53 and Superflex ADP. We look at snap percentage, and this is his saving grace right here. This is why people are still like, just when I thought I was out on Javonte Williams, they keep pulling me back in. It's his 55.7% snap percentage that he has amongst all the running backs so far this year. For whatever reason, Sean Payton just likes, taking a running back and just like ramming him through a brick wall repeatedly until he gets some type of reduction from them. And it's crazy because you have other receiving backs there. You got Audric Estime, who's been doing really well this year. Jaleel McLaughlin was good last year in terms of efficiency, but just wasn't getting the opportunity. You go to some of his other metrics here. You look at his yards per route, yards after contact per attempt, the RB6, the missed tackles forced, RB4 in the 21 running back draft class. He does do well as a receiving option. Believe it or not, that's something that he has improved upon this year, leading the 21 draft class at running back with yards per route run. But then we get to, elusive rating, 69%. Like, you want your elusive ratings for running backs to be, above 100 or at least in the high 90s. And that, that's just, for me, that's unacceptable given the hype that was coming out of, North Carolina with him and Michael Carter. You thought Javonte was going to be the next coming, and he was playing really well till he tore his ACL, and it's just been a long road back. And, normally the medical experts say, it takes a year or two for players with an ACL to come back and be at a level. And it's kind of concerning that he hasn't gotten to that elite level we saw glimpses of his rookie year, and we may never. And so is he somebody that I want to invest in for depth? No, because I don't see where the upside is going to be coming from given the lack of efficiency he has both as a running back and as a receiving back. So yeah, I'm definitely trying to offload him here, and it's one of those things where somewhere in the third round is kind of where I'm shopping for. So I'm kind of agreeing with DLF's trade value there, but really disappointing. And it could be through no fault of his own. It could be literally just because the injury, for whatever reason, just took it all out of him. What are your thoughts on Javonte?
I'm right there. You honestly nailed it. I like Javonte Williams a lot. I liked him coming out. When there's one league in particular where I bought him coming off of the injury. I bought a share of him, and I've held on to that share, and I'm probably going to go down with the ship holding onto that share just because of the fact that, like, sunk cost fallacy and everything. I'm gonna ride to the end with him and hope that he figures it out. But I'm not holding my breath anymore. That's for sure.
Yeah. And who's your player from the 21 draft class?
So I just realized where I messed up. You did I did the 21 draft class first. So mine is now going to be the 23 draft class. I messed up, my bad. So my 23 draft class is Kendre Miller. Again, I don't have a whole lot to say on him. This, again, has just been a health issue after health issue after health issue. when he has been on the field, he looks like he's been really good. He's 5.8 yards per attempt, 4 yards after contact per attempt. I'm really high on Kendry Miller, and I still think that he has a chance to produce, but I don't think it's going to happen while he's in New Orleans, especially as long as oh dang it, who's the coach?
Well, I don't even know who the temporary coach is there. It's not Dennis Allen anymore. You got fired.
Oh, that's right. Maybe he will have a chance since Dennis Allen hated him so much.
Yeah, exactly.
So DLF has him valued at a late third. I agree with that. More than happy to pay that if I wanted to try to get him on my bench. I'd probably try to get him for a fourth because at this point he's pretty much dead in the water. He is a roster clogger, but I'm hoping that a lot of those benches are so deep in Dynasty. The way that I look at it is a lot of times I'm holding on to guys and hoping and praying. I'm a man of faith.
Well, for some of these players, you're going to have to be. So that makes a lot. But, yeah, folks. So that kind of gives you our thoughts on a couple players from the 21 through 23 draft classes that we're high on and we are low on for Dynasty. For those who are looking for updated Dynasty rankings, make sure to head over to fantasyandframes.com this weekend. I'll have mine updated there, as well as I'm sure the other gentlemen who participate in those rankings will have theirs at some point. But yeah, no, we just Rich, first show together. It's been pretty cool, man. But thank you everybody in the chat who's joined in. Thank you very much for participating. So for Rich, I'm Jorge. Stay tuned right now for Fourth and Frames that's coming up next. And you all have a great rest of your week. Take care.